All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Rise Zion. My name is Seth. Hope you're all having a fantastic Friday. I don't know if any of you have heard the news yet, but yesterday something absolutely stunning occurred, and that was the recent announcement by Trump that the United States will be taking ownership of the Gaza Strip. Now, this is good news, I believe. Now, for the last 3 decades, the United States have followed the same rules. The playbook has centered around creating a two-state solution, which in very simple terms means that both Israel and Palestine would, in theory, live together, each having their own governance and security, their own state, as the name implies, right? But it has become increasingly clear over the years that Palestine is not interested in a two-state solution. And this, unfortunately, has led to wars, conflicts, thriving terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip, and immense suffering on both the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. It's abundantly clear that it's time for a change. And this change proposed by Trump, at least it would appear, ends the concept of a two-state solution and puts the United States in charge of managing and owning the Gaza Strip, to paraphrase Donald Trump's remarks here. We'll be going over these statements made by Trump about his new plan, and we'll also be exploring the scriptures. It's possible that what Trump is doing right now is in fulfillment of scripture, which is really, really interesting and exciting, leading up to the second coming. I think we're all very interested to see how this future unfolds, and it's never happened before. I don't believe anything like this has ever happened before. It's very exciting and an ambitious plan for sure, and I believe that it has the potential to bring a great deal of prosperity and wealth to the now destroyed region, as well as to bring all sorts of people into the area to live, not just Palestinians, but people from all over the world, including Israelis who have traditionally considered the Gaza Strip a part of their promised land under the covenant of Abraham, right? So let's dive right into the first clip here.
I also strongly believe that the Gaza Strip, which has been a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades and so bad for the people anywhere near it, and especially those who live there, being in its presence just has not been good, and it should not go through a process of rebuilding and occupation by the same people that have really stood there and fought for it and lived there and died there and lived a miserable existence there. Instead, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza, ending the death and destruction and, frankly, bad luck. This can be paid for by neighboring countries of great wealth, but the people will be able to live in comfort and peace, and we'll make sure something really spectacular is done. They're going to have peace. They're not going to be shot at and killed and destroyed like this civilization of wonderful people has had to endure. The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site.
Okay, so this first clip, we get an outline of the why, or rather why Trump feels that his plan is necessary, and we get an outline as to what this will look like in its implementation. Trump acknowledges on the one hand that the area has become a symbol of death and destruction for so many decades, and so bad for the people who live there and for the Israelis. But notice how he says bad for anyone near it, right? Now, Trump sees the current conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians as primarily the fault of some people who are currently living there in the Gaza Strip. Therefore, it shouldn't be rebuilt and occupied by those same specific individuals. If you want to change the trajectory, you can't just keep doing the same things that you've always done forever. You've got to change things up a bit. Now, instead, he says, we should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts to rebuild, he says. Now, Trump's goal is the end of death and destruction in this area. In the meantime, the Palestinians will be relocated to other nations of various places, right? And he ends his remarks in this clip by saying that the only reason the Palestinians want to be in Gaza is because they have no alternative. And this is absolutely true. And no other Muslim nation wanted to take them in before or during the current conflict. And they don't want to take them in now. It sounds like Trump will be creating some sort of incentive for these Muslim countries to help out. Countries such as Jordan and Egypt, who have closed their borders to the Gaza Strip and not allowed any immigration in or out of their areas.
This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. I'm hopeful that this ceasefire could be the beginning of a larger and more enduring peace that will end the bloodshed and killing once and for all.
So in addition to having them move back to Gaza after the Gaza Strip is rebuilt, it sounds like the Palestinians may choose to stay where they were relocated during the reconstruction and live out their lives in peace and harmony. Or they may choose to move back. Again, the concern is getting the people out of Gaza now because of the danger of that the rubble presents, and so that they can start to rebuild safely and create something new and different. They want to create what Trump calls an economic development that will create unlimited jobs and housing for the people who live there. Okay, but he stresses we can't keep doing what we've been doing for the last 100 years, which has truly been a disaster. And that is absolutely true. We got to change things up. We got to do something different. And this proposal seems interesting.
Follow up on what you were saying about the Gazans leaving Gaza, going to other countries. One, where exactly are you suggesting that they should go? And two, are you saying they should return after it's rebuilt? And if not, who do you envision living there?
I envision a world, people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't work. It will never work. And you have to learn from history. History has, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the king in Jordan and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done. And people can live in harmony and in peace.
Okay, so here we see that Egypt is referenced as a new place of settlement, and also Jordan, as well as other countries. These places are where Trump currently thinks will be the temporary area where the Palestinians will be living as they rebuild Gaza. But Trump says, and this is pretty remarkable, they plan on developing the area to be like the Riviera of the Middle East, like a thriving, beautiful area where people from all over the world can come and live and thrive, not just Palestinians. Okay, now this is a wild, wild shift in policy. This is an interesting and an incredibly different plan. And fascinatingly, this may be a fulfillment of prophecy as well, which we will be reading in Amos chapter 9, if you want to go there. In verse 11, it says, "In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old." So notice here the allusion to ruins and buildings here. And that really reminds me of the current situation that the Gaza Strip finds itself in. I know that might be a tenuous connection, but it just reminded me of that. So I thought I'd bring it up. Now, some people interpret this scripture, verse 11, to be in reference to the rebuilding of the temple, right? Now, I know that Jared from the Christian Homestead channel has been really following quite closely the third temple, and that could be true. But also when I studied this verse, I learned that many biblical scholars consider this rebuilding as also a rebuilding of the Davidic dynasty, or a restoration of Israel to its former glory. Now, it's also important to remember the context of the book of Amos, right? The book of Amos addresses the divided kingdom of Israel and Judah. Now, the prophecy looks forward to a time when the Davidic line will be restored and the nation reunited. So that's also very interesting if you consider that the Gaza Strip could be considered a part of Israel as well as the current state of Israel. So right now they're divided, right? So we need to recognize that over the course of many years, Israel has been being restored ever since Israel was granted its land back after World War II, and also ever since the gospel was restored and the church has been involved in the gathering of Israel. In any case, let's continue reading in verse 12. Okay, 12, that they may possess the remnant of Edom and of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord that doeth this. Okay, now this is very interesting as well. Edom, or the nation of Edom, are descendants of Esau, and some traditions hold that the Palestinian people, or some of them, are Edomites. Okay, the accuracy of this information is currently debated by scholars, but there are both Jewish scholars and ancient Arab genealogist records that show some connections between the Edomites and the Palestinian people. But notice how the book of Amos says a remnant of Edom. Perhaps it isn't claiming that all Palestinians are Edomites. Now, in addition to this, the verse 12 mentions all of the heathen which are called by my name, right? So those are Christians, right? Perhaps even Latter-day Saints, if you want to be more specific about it, because we are considered members of that group, right? But in any case, I think we can broadly say Christianity in general, right? Okay, let's continue reading in verse 13 and 14. So it says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes, him that soweth seeds, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. And I will bring again the captivity of my people of Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. Okay, so this phrase references, when it says bring again the captivity of my people of Israel, that means bring them out of captivity. That is in reference to the return of the Israelites from exile. In the historical context, this likely refers to the return from Babylonian captivity. However, it can also be interpreted more broadly as a restoration from any form of oppression or displacement. Okay, and let's continue reading in verse 15, and it says, "And I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled out of their land, which I have given them, saith the Lord thy God." Okay, it's important to remember when reading Amos 9 that many scholars also interpret this entire chapter to be generally about the restoration of Israel. More broadly, as in a global restoration of the Gentiles as well. And so I think it's important to point out that even the descendants of Esau are technically of the house of Israel, and so they too need to be gathered as well, right? Now, so it's interesting that Trump's plan involves everyone in the world coming to Gaza, which he envisions as being rebuilt as sort of this paradise, right? Riviera by the sea, okay? Now, the implications of that are very, very interesting. So if Trump is able to create a sort of peaceful, safe haven in this area, he's going to need investors and contractors too, right, to build it. And I wonder how this might impact the church's missionary efforts in this area. Will the church be able to proselytize in this new territory, for example? That's something very, very interesting to consider, I think. All right, so let's continue on to the next clip to get more of Trump's plan for the Gaza Strip.
You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there, redevelopment? And Mr. Prime Minister, do you see this idea as a way to expand the boundaries of Israel and to have a longer peace, even though the Israeli people know how important that land is to you and your citizens, just as the space is inherited by the Palestinians as well?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight. I've studied it. I've studied this very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it from every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be, and it's only going to get worse. And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous, and I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that. Bibi?
I mentioned again tonight our 3 goals. And the third goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism, so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea. And I think it's worth paying attention to this. We're talking about it. He's exploring it with his people, with his staff. I think it's something that could change history. And it's worthwhile really pursuing this avenue.
Okay, so in this clip, we see a reporter who seems to take a sort of oppositional view to the idea. She frames her question as the United States taking over a sovereign territory. However, it is highly debatable that the Palestinians can be considered sovereign for a variety of reasons, not least of which is the fact that Palestine is ruled by a terrorist organization. But she asks if Israel sees this as an opportunity to expand its borders and to have a longer peace. But also she acknowledges the historical and religious importance of the site to both Israel and Palestine, which I thought was an interesting thing to do. But Trump says that he sees this as a long-term ownership. Okay. Now that is on the part of the United States, not necessarily on the part of Israel. So that was very interesting. But something about the way that he uses the word ownership to me implies that the ownership might be a joint ownership with various nations who may invest in the project. As you know, Trump is a businessman and a developer. And I think that when he says ownership, he is referring to perhaps like stakeholder ownership, which I think is very interesting. Now, if that's the case, I believe that this is the first time that something like this has happened before, where multiple nations sort of have ownership of a territory through their investment stakes. I think that the only thing that could be considered similar would be called like a condominium. And that's where 2 countries can own the same territory. And they have an agreement between the 2 of them. So I imagine that if this were the case, that the United States would be the majority stakeholder with controlling interest, right? But again, this is just speculation on my part. I think it's really interesting to think about and to consider how it might occur.
How many people are you thinking about?
All of them. I mean, we're talking about probably 1.7 million people, 1.7 million, maybe 1.8 million. But I think all of them. I think they'll be resettled in areas where they can live a beautiful life and not be worried about dying every day.
All right, so it just kind of outlines, again, the plan for the Palestinians. 1 million people, right? And he says that in the meantime, they will be resettled and they can live a beautiful life and not be worried about dying every day. As always, Trump is very pragmatic and he is looking for solutions that work, according to him, right? So we'll see if this works. I'm really, really excited to see if his plan will function the way that he plans it to. Right? And that's it for this episode, you guys. We live in really, really exciting times. It'll be really fascinating to see how all of this plays out and to see if his plan is successful. And of course, it'll be very interesting to see how this might be beneficial in spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ and seeing how these momentous events are shaping history and fulfilling the prophecies of the last days, too. So if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Our goal is to reach 10,000 subscribers, so our important messages can reach as many people as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.